I want to talk about this contract for DeVonta Smith, which I actually think is going to be a good thing for my man Xavier Worthy. 3 years, $75 million contract that he signed, which is going to make him, if you go look at average annual value, he's going to be at around 25 million per year. On when that contract kicks in, that'll make him tied for the fourth highest paid receiver. I don't even know how the Eagles can do it. They have two $25 million a year wide receivers now. I don't even know how the hell you can do that.
And then they just paid
The,
Saquon Barkley too in the offseason.
I want to say Harry Roseman is a warlock, man, when it comes to that tail salary cap. Like, what? What? Excuse me?
How many
Like,
how
how
many
does that
how many sets of books do the Eagles have?
right? I'm like, this is what people say the salary cap is a fugazi
Yeah.
that's not real. Howie Roseman is the example they keep bringing up. Like, it's not real. It's not real. Look at what he's doing. The Cowboys are like, oh, it's real. We gotta pay. We gotta. Oh, it's real. Oh, it's real. See, the Cowboys are the example of, oh, it's real. It's real as hell. And then the Eagles are like, no, it ain't real. It's a fugazi. But anyway, so DeVonta Smith is making $25 million a year. And remember, DeVonta Smith. The reason that I think this is good for Xavier Worthy is because that's the ceiling for an Xavier Worthy comp, right? The knock against Xavier Worthy is that he's just too light. He's a light wide receiver. He's 166 pounds or whatever it is. And in the NFL, that really doesn't translate. But we know now that more and more receivers who are slight in their build have a frame similar to Xavier Worthy, if they are having more success in the league. And DeVonta Smith is the best example. If you look at, because basically, if you go look at Xavier Worthy, he was the ninth lightest receiver at the combine since 2000. I mean, he was tiny and frail for the most part. If you go look at the top 50 lightest wide receivers at the NFL Combine, keep in mind DeVonta Smith did not go to Combine to work out. He did it at the Pro Day. So we can throw DeVonta Smith in this category if we want to, but he wasn't officially at the Combine. We'll throw him in there for the sake of discussion. They're only basically, if you go look at the top 50 lightest wide receivers, right, since 2000, that group, he basically DeVonta Smith and Deshaun Jackson are among two of those receivers who end up being 1,000-yard receivers among the lightest of that group. And remember, Xavier Worthy says that his hero is Deshaun Jackson, right? Deshaun Jackson is who he aspires to be. We patterned his game after Deshaun Jackson. So there's not a lot of there are not a lot of examples of receivers with the frame of Xavier Worthy having success, but I do think more and more recently we've seen more receivers who have that kind of frame have more success in the NFL because it's become more of a spread league and you can put those guys in the slot. They don't have to be on the outside facing press coverage consistently. You can manufacture or engineer them an easier release, get them into space. And once they get into space, then that's when they really can be, they can wreak havoc and be terrorists. And and more, you're starting to see the NFL open to the idea of drafting wide receivers who are that light really high in the draft. So there have been 24 wide receivers drafted in the first two rounds with a body mass index of 25 or less since 2000. 9 of those have come since DeVonta Smith was drafted. Which means he was drafted 10th overall in 2021, which means you had a 21-year span where you just had 14. This is in the first two rounds of the NFL draft. I'm going to make sure I specify that. 24 wide receivers drafted in the first two rounds of the NFL draft since 2000 with a 25 BMI or less, and 10 of those have come since 2021, right? So 10 of those have come in the last 3 drafts, which is amazing. Just shows you the difference. So in a 21-year span, you had 14 wide receivers drafted with 25 BMI or less in the first 2 rounds. But in the last 3 years, you've had 10 such wide receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds. And I'll give Sark a lot of credit. When Sark had that offense that weaponized DeVonta Smith and made him, turned him into a Heisman caliber wide receiver, he did put out the blueprint and the template on how to use these types of wide receivers: small, frail, slight, but speedy and quick change of direction, twitchy guys. He put out a great blueprint on how to use them. And the NFL has taken a lot of those cheat codes and concepts, and they have applied them to guys like DeVonta Smith. And I think they'll do the same thing with a guy like Xavier Worthy, because more and more you're starting to see those types of space-oriented offenses. So for a guy like Xavier Worthy, can he get drafted in the first 2 rounds? I think he will go in the first 2 rounds, but does that translate to on-field success? I think now he has a better chance of translating to on-field success than he did previously. It'll all depend on who he ends up with. He ends up with, Kansas City or ends up with Miami. Hell yeah, Xavier Worthy is going to be one of the freakiest receivers in the league, but he ends up in a bad offensive system that doesn't use a lot of progressive concepts. Then they may set Xavier Worthy back a little bit. But like I said, now more than ever, he is in a position to have success for a receiver like him. Prior to that, it was only Deshaun Jackson and DeVonta Smith. They were pretty much it. I'm talking about the elite wide receivers to be drafted high with that frame who also translated to productivity in the NFL. Just Deshaun Jackson and DeVonta Smith were your 1,000-yard receivers. Even when you're looking at receivers who are really fast, world-class speed receivers, even that actually is a knock against Xavier Worthy. The top 25 fastest players in the history of the NFL Combine, there's only one, receivers at the NFL Combine, top 25 fastest receivers at the NFL Combine. There's only one that's caught 1,000 yards in the NFL, and that was Santana Moss. So I think Xavier Worthy will be the outlier in terms of a lot of recent comparisons with receivers with his frame and size. I think he'll be the outlier. And that DeVonta Smith contract, it is proof that the NFL is starting to change their tune a little bit when it comes to receivers of his ilk.